everybody. It is Thursday. It is 10 a.m. and I have a new computer, so I'm just getting used to how bright it is. It is raining in New York, which is always not the best, but it is June, which means the beach is coming. So I hope everybody has in a good mood. Everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend. You know what happens after the Memorial Day weekend, everybody's tired for the rest of the week, so it's like a wasted week. But we are here, we're working hard, processing cases, talking to you guys about everything, right? So, in terms of updates, there hasn't been any major developments in the last week. Nothing that would shock anybody or would fundamentally change anybody's status. We do have still going on the ability of the Haitian nationals to apply for temporarily protected status in the U.S. if you are a citizen, national of Haiti, and if you're inside the United States, give us a call. We'll give you all the requirements. We do still have DACA available for people who've been brought here as, children, who came here as children. Give us a call. We'll give you all the updates on that as well. Now, what did I want to talk to you about today? Of course, one of the most popular topics in immigration, asylum. Asylum is very complicated, and of course it's not going to be enough time to talk about it over 30 minutes, but I'm going to give you some general overviews. So under the international law, the United States is as a signatory has to provide protections for refugees. There's a difference between a refugee and an asylee. In order to seek asylum, a person has to be either already inside the United States borders, or the person can come to the border with the United States. And the border can be different things: U.S.-Mexico border, U.S.-Canada border. You can seek asylum at any port of entry. You can do at the docking of a ship, at an airport, right? But you have to be either at the border with the United States or actually inside of the United States. Now, what is asylum? Asylum is for people who meet the definition of a refugee. A refugee is a person who is unable or unwilling to return to their home country because they have experienced past persecution or have a fear of future persecution based on their race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. One of the most complicated ones is a membership in a particular social group, but we can touch on that next time. It is kind of nuanced and stuff. But race, if you are afraid of persecution or have sustained persecution experienced based on your race. Religion, if you're practicing a certain religion that is either illegal or is not allowed by the government in the country where you are. Political opinion is, of course, when you're a member of an opposition or your political opinion is different from that of a ruling party, and then you're afraid of being persecuted, of harm because of that, or you have already experienced harm, based on that. So for example, in the news in the last week, there was an incident where the Belarusian government made a plane land on their territory, and they took a person off the flight who is a member of an opposition to the Belarusian government, and they took him into custody, right? So if that person sustains harm because he or she is opposed to the ruling regime in the country or to the ruling party in the country, and then that person comes to the United States or to the border with the United States, like he could go to the United States government and say, hi, I'm here to seek asylum because I cannot return back to Belarus, to my home country, because I'm afraid that harm is going to come to me because I have already been harmed in the past because of my political opinion, right? This is like a general overview of things. Once you come into the country, if you're already inside of the United States, you have a year. You have to seek asylum within the year. There is an exception based on changed circumstances that you can argue if you are seeking asylum after a certain time, more than a year in the United States. But that's an exception to the rule. The general rule is that you get here and you have a year to apply for asylum. How do you apply for asylum, right? There are two different ways. Today we're talking about affirmative asylum. Affirmative asylum is when you're not in removal proceedings, you don't have any type of, you have never been in front of an immigration judge, or you don't have a notice to appear in front of an immigration judge, but you're here in the United States and you come forward, affirm yourself, you affirmatively seek asylum. The method by which you do it is you fill out a form, I-589. There is no specific requirement for a personal statement, but usually the form is accompanied by a statement that summarizes what harm you're afraid of, or what harm has been done to you, why you seek asylum, right? There's no specific format, but it's a statement where you basically talk about you, your past life, and your future fear, or things you've experienced in the past. Then as attorneys, of course, we attached any supporting documents. Sometimes if a person has been in custody and have sustained physical injuries, there might be pictures, there might be medical records. Sometimes if a person was a member of an opposition party and participated in protest, there may be postings on social media, flyers, articles, and so on and so forth. Sometimes if you are running away from, let's say, domestic violence, and the government of your country doesn't take measures to protect you from such a thing, sometimes there are police reports, and again, medical stuff, medical records. Each case will be different. Sometimes when a person has sustained a deep trauma, they can be suffering from PTSD, depression, anxiety, a variety of mental health issues. And there have been many times when we've sent people to mental health professionals in order to evaluate them and provide a report to us, right? Whenever you're evaluated by a third independent party, you can talk about your trauma yourself, but then if you also have a verified either diagnosis or an evaluation, that also becomes supportive documents, gets attached to your case. Then a big part of it, of course, is what's called country conditions, right? We want to show the asylum officer the general atmosphere in the country. The general rule is that you approach a case assuming that the asylum officer has never experienced, seen, or doesn't know anything about your situation. The asylum officer is not expected to know what the situation in a given country is for people with your background or with your religion or with your political opinion. So it is on us to show them the situation, the condition, either widespread violence or how victims of domestic violence are treated, or how opposition leaders are treated, or how members of a particular religion are treated in that country. We have to provide a picture, create an understanding, or show them what it is that's happening in your home country over a period of time, right? So that's the big part of it. Sometimes not necessarily for the asylum interview, but in general, if the situation in the country is very nuanced, and you can also elect to have an expert in that country write a letter with all of the credentials, right? So there are people who study political, socio-economical situations in a given country, right? There are professors in colleges who have devoted their entire careers on studying a specific region, sometimes a specific country, sometimes a specific issue within the region or the country, and those people are experts. They can provide their resume where they would show, like, this is where I teach, or this is where I work, this is how many articles I've written, this is why I'm an expert in that field, and then they can provide their assessment of the situation in addition to the general country condition reports. Those are very, very useful. They're not cheap. Of course, any expert will charge a fee for their services, but especially in very nuanced cases, they can be very, very useful, right? When I talk about country conditions report, they have two different versions. There is government sources, and there are publications, right? And publications also can be different. There are reports that the United States government publishes every year on countries around the world. They have everywhere: Russia, Iran, China, they have everywhere, Nigeria, any country, Ecuador, all over the country. The government will publish a report on the situation on different areas: religion, freedom of exercising their religion, how different genders are treated, representation in the government, migration within the country, how prisoners are treated, how political opposition is treated. So there are these reports that we pull that is the position of the United States government and what they have observed, right? There are verified third-party reports out there. They're well known and respected, and those people, those organizations also publish their reports, and they're very, very useful. And then, of course, there are publications in the newspaper, and they are differentiated. If it's a publication in New York Times, something that is a world-known publication, it's going to be treated very differently than something that is a local newspaper or something that just gets published online. Right, so as you can see, Asylum has a lot of different dimensions and a lot of different issues. I am just touching on some of them. This is by far not dispositive. There are so many different aspects of the asylum, and right now we're only talking about the affirmative asylum. We're not even touching on anything that happens while you're already in the removal proceeding, okay? So let's say you have put together your packet and you have mailed it in. You put together, the pictures, the signatures, all the required, documents. Everything is good. You made 2 copies of it. You have submitted it. The government has accepted it. The government will issue you a receipt notice. that's going to have your receipt number on it. Now, the government is United States government, the asylum backlog is long. It is over 300,000 cases. Under the Obama administration, there was already a pretty significant backlog of the asylum cases. Their position was that they were going to hear first cases in, right? Get heard first. So first in, first out, right? So if you filed in September 2017, well, September 2016, and then somebody filed in November 2017, then your case that was filed first would be heard first before the other one is going to be heard. Then the Trump administration came, and their position on immigration, as everybody knows, was very, very different. And one of the first things they did, they switched the how things are treated, right? So they were doing last one in, first one out. So for a period of time, the asylum office was scheduling cases that were filed in, let's say, February 1st, 2017. They were scheduling those cases before cases that have been already pending for 3-4 years, right? So there was a period of time that how things were going. The motivation of the Trump administration was complex, but we're not going to be touching on that, right? This is just a general overview. So you filed your case, you waited, right now the wait time, is quite a few years. You waited the few years, you receive your interview notice. Now, because it's been several years, there might be things that have already changed, right? So you need to look at your evidence that you have put together, and you have to see if anything has to be updated. Most of the time, country conditions have to be updated because, things in the country might have changed, better or worse, but they have, might have been changed, and the things that you have attached from 2017 are different than things that are happening now in 2021. That's one thing. If you're running away from, gangs or violence or stuff like that, you might have received additional threats. There might have been some correspondence. There might have been developments in your case, and the government should be updated on it in order to make the appropriate decision in your case, right? So then you go to your asylum interview. Now, the asylum office operates different from USCIS in the sense that you have to bring your own interpreter with you. This was the case always, until recently, until COVID. But I'm sure, not sure, but probably may go back to the way it was. But I'll give you the two scenarios. So pre-COVID, you came to the asylum interview with attorney, without attorney, that's, personal situation. But let's say you came with your attorney and you had to bring your own interpreter with you. The asylum office did not provide interpretation. So, you checked in, all good, officer brings you back, takes all your documents, and what would happen is, the attorney's there, you're there, the officer's there, your interpreter is there, and then there was a monitor over the phone. So complex, I know. So the officer would say things in English, your interpreter would translate it to you. You would answer in your own native language, then the interpreter would translate back to the asylum officer. But the monitor on the phone was supposed to make sure that the translation that your interpreter provided was accurate. I know, it's complex, right? So the asylum interviews can last up to several hours. It depends how complex and multifaceted your claim is. I have had cases where a woman with 2 or 3 kids had to go in for asylum interview, and she had no sitters available, right? So the kids came with her, and It was very nice. The officer actually brought in toys. The kids were sitting outside of the asylum office. Not that it was very nice, it was very painful. But they are supposed to be non-adversarial, meaning the officer's there to hear your story, right? They have special training in sensitivity. Let's say you are a woman who has gone through some sexual trauma or mostly sexual trauma. The officer assigned to your case is male. A lot of the times, most of the time, if an officer is male and he has reviewed your case, he will come out and he will say, are you comfortable with a male officer interviewing you? Because there are countries around the world where a woman, just by the culture in the country where she's from, would not be comfortable speaking about certain things to a man. So the asylum officers do have sensitivity and special training, and they're there to hear you. They're not there as prosecutors. They're there to hear your claim and ask questions to determine whether you're actually eligible for asylum or not. So you go to an asylum interview, you get, to tell your story, answer questions, and the way it's usually done is the officer will ask you questions and will type up the answers as you're speaking. And they actually tell you in advance, don't worry, I'm just typing notes for myself. I'm not being disrespectful. I am listening to you intently. I just want to make sure that I got correctly everything that you're saying to me. And at the end of the interview, the attorneys with you can make a closing statement, and you get to look at the notes that the officer, took to make any corrections and to see, if everything has been taken down, not the way that you have said that, right? And then the officer will conclude an interview, and the officer will tell you whether your decision needs to be picked up at the asylum office at a later date, and they will give you a date, they'll give you a piece of paper, and they will tell you have to come here, pick it up at this time. Or sometimes the decisions are being mailed to you and to your attorney. In terms of situation with interpreters, COVID-wise, it's a little different. Pre-COVID, your attorney, your interpreter, you and your officer would be in the same room. Now, because of COVID, your attorney's in one room, you're in a different room, and there is an interpreter over the phone. You cannot bring your own interpreter. They're providing it to you. These are just the precautions that have been taken in order, to ensure safety of everybody. You have to wear a mask the entire time you're there, and you're basically separated, from each other. If you have any documents that you're bringing, you're just going to be able to submit it either directly to the officer at the conclusion of the interview or pre-interview, but nobody's in the same room right now, right? So now the other advantages or disadvantages to it, I don't know. I think it depends on who you are as a person. Some people, maybe it is easier for them to tell their story, especially if there's a lot of traumatic events in it, when there's nobody looking at you, in terms of there's a computer, maybe when there's 3-4 people in the room, you're not going to feel as safe in expressing your emotions and your experiences. For some people, it can feel a little bit, isolating or maybe impersonal. These are the times of COVID. They're definitely not anything that we were prepared for. They don't sometimes work very well for immigration cases because there's so many sensitive issues. But these are the circumstances that we're given, and we're doing what we're doing in those circumstances, right? Now, at the conclusion of the interview, when you get your decision, you can, if you're granted asylum, you become an asylee. You become an asylee. You can, if you want, get a travel document. You can work. You can do anything you want. You do not get a green card. You become an asylee. That's what your status is. If you're granted asylum, you become an asylee. You have to be an asylee for a period of 1 year before you're even eligible to apply for the green card, right? If during that time you need to travel for emergency, out of the country, you're eligible for a travel document. It's a whole process. You could have to talk to your attorney about all of that. There are certain benefits, that you're eligible for once you become an asylee. I could talk about it at a different time. But that's it. Your status has changed to United States to an asylee, right? If you are denied and you're still in valid status, for example, if you came on a tourist visa, applied for asylum, and were interviewed within the 6 months, and at the time of the decision you're still in valid status, if you're denied, that's it. You're denied asylum. There is no immigration removal proceedings. There's nothing that you have been denied asylum, right? And then what your options are, we can talk about it at a later time if you guys are interested. If you have been denied asylum at the time when you're already outside of your status, you have no status, it's been more than 6 months if you came on a tourist visa, or you have stopped going to classes if you're an F1, or you've never had status because at some point you've crossed the border and you've never held a valid status in the United States, and your asylum is denied, you get referred to the immigration judge. And we will talk about what happens in removal proceedings in front of an immigration judge next Thursday at 10 o'clock. This is an overview. It is by no means contains all the details and everything that there is to know about asylum. It's a very, very complex area of law with things constantly changing and new policies coming out. So if you have any questions, if you want me to cover anything specific, I will gladly do so. Just, let me know. Next time, I will talk about asylum and removal proceedings, right? Some of it, I'm probably not going to have time to cover all of that. But it is definitely a big area of our practice. We dedicated a lot of attention and patience to our asylum clients and asylum officers that we work with. It's a heavy topic because it involves persecution and trauma, fear of trauma and stuff like that. So a lot of the times, we deal with some very, very heavy issues. And it requires a lot of sensitivity, patience, and attention to the client and to their circumstances. Right? So on this cheery note, I will end today. I just wanted to let you know we're working on a YouTube channel. So soon I will make an announcement. All the videos that are going to be posted on Facebook will be also going to our YouTube channel, where you can watch them at any time, browse them, share them, whatever the case may be, and they will also be posted on our website, so you can have easy access to any information that you need. If you have any questions, give us a call, email us. We're here, we're working for you. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week and a great weekend, even though it's raining. New York. If you're not in New York, I hope you're experiencing better weather. Thank you so much. I will see you next Thursday at 10